everybody, and welcome back to the Rocking Midlife Podcast. And we are well into 2023. We are rocking on, and I am so thrilled to have an amazing guest with me today. This is a lady I have admired from afar online for many years now. And joining me all the way from Washington is Dr. Carol Parker Walsh.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's so fabulous to be here.
It's so cool to have you here. Now, Carol is an amazing, brilliant lady. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be popping her whole bio down below, either on the blog or on the podcast notes or on the YouTube channel, wherever you are watching or tuning in, because seriously, this lady will amaze you. Very, very simply, Dr. Carol Parker Walsh is an executive and leadership coach who helps her clients showcase their brilliance and design an epic career and life that matters. Now, this is an amazing lady who apparently calls herself overeducated, whereas I just think, wow, you're amazing. This incredible lady has 2 doctorates. I know, not one, but 2 doctorates. 2 masters. I mean, did you have no life for a while there, Carol? Were you just like, let's just do this study thing and let's really do it well? And
yes, I will admit I love school.
Yeah, I would think so. And she has certificates from not one school, but 3, Harvard, Oxford, and Dartmouth. So just with that alone should give you an idea of the caliber of this lady. And she has an incredible podcast herself. So if you haven't found it yet, please go have a look. It's called The Midlife Career Rebel. And it was actually named one of Matt's List top career podcasts for 2022. So amazing lady. Carol, it's so wonderful to have you here. Please just tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you end up kind of talking and working in this midlife sphere?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I love, sometimes I hear those introductions and I'm thinking, wow, I did do a lot, didn't I?
You did.
over these years on my path to midlife. I got into doing this because it was my own journey. It was my own process of discovery of what I wanted to do at the point of midlife. What often happens through our lives and careers, particularly as we move into midlife, we have certain life events that happen that make us rethink a lot of things. And it started for me. I divorced and was a single mom with 2 kiddos, and that started me rethinking about who I was as a mom, as a person independent of that, right? So if you have kids, sometimes that can be intertwined.
Oh yeah.
And then I was in a massive car accident, and that car accident really changed the trajectory of my life because it was a near fatal crash. A drunk driver hit the car, and I heard a voice that said, turn now, in the moment that I was about to be hit. And I didn't understand like what it was or what, why it was there, but it was as clear as if someone said it to me. And making a turn away from the car hitting me head on, which had he hit me head on, I would not be here.
Goodness.
But he hit the passenger side because I turned and it kind of broke the right side of my body. And there's a lot of recovery and healing. But from that accident, that voice turn now kept resonating for me, because I think I was hearing that voice before, that am I really happy in what I'm doing? Am I on the right path? Am I just working because I have to pay the bills and I have kids to raise? Am I really, is this what I see myself doing the next 10, 20 years of my life? And the answers were often, no, not really, sort of. And that accident for me was so galvanizing because through the recovery process, it started me on the path of really asking those deeper questions that I don't think we ever give ourselves a chance to ask, because we're just on that rat race. And a lot of us are just on autopilot when it comes to our life and careers. And I just started asking myself, what do I love? What do I value? What's important to me? And I was able to start identifying why certain careers fit me and certain roles didn't fit me, and what I loved about certain positions and what I didn't love about certain positions. And it was just giving me all of this insight to connect to who I was as a person, and not just a title or a job or a position, which is how most of us define ourselves, is through our work. And once I was able to kind of pull back those layers and really figure out me, I was able to then reconstruct something that was more meaningful and valuable for the way I wanted to live my life. So really at the precipice of turning 50, I left my career. I started my business because I wanted to help so many other women,
Yes.
you know, who are hearing that voice and who are struggling with that whisper that's telling them to turn now, to be able to help give them the support that they need that I didn't have figuring all this stuff out, to really discover that process and step into who they're meant to be and what they want to do in the world. So,
Oh, I
you
love
know,
it.
that
Yeah.
that really was the path that got me into doing this work.
You know, I've had the privilege of speaking to so many amazing ladies from around the world like yourself, and it's amazing how they all seem to have a similar kind of, you know, like in Christian circles would say, like a come to Jesus moment. But you know, they had this moment of revelation. In your case, it was a physical, actual event, as well as that voice
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
turn now. I know for me, I actually put all my career, everything on hold for 6 years, and ended up homeschooling my children when they were teenagers, because they were both traveling the world with their
Mm.
sports, and there was no time for them to be able to go to a regular school and, you know, fit in their traveling and training. And for me, it was when my daughter, the youngest one, was receiving all her university entrance papers and was so excited. And I just felt I'd been punched in the gut, realized I was redundant. And my voice was saying,
Mm.
is this it? So yours is
Wow.
turn now. Mine was, is this it? And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
so many women at midlife at some point hit that very thing, don't they? Where it's like the success in their job doesn't matter anymore, or something happens, like in your case, or they find themselves suddenly single, or something awful happens in loss or health or whatever, and then this is this moment of, who am I? What do I do now?
Yeah. And you know what I have come to believe, and even in my own experiences is true, is that I think that we hear those voices well before the moment of
Yes.
impact or that turning point or that come
Yep.
to Jesus moment. Like
Totally
we
agree.
have the inkling, we have the instinct, we're not settled, we know something is off, but we as women tend to ignore it,
Yeah.
right? We ignore it because we're either on this trajectory that we figure, well, we might as well write it out, or we're putting so much time and focus and attention into our children, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
next like we've had our turn, so let me focus on, you
Yes.
know, my kids or whatever is next. And so because we're so used to putting ourselves on the back burner and not really making ourselves the priority in a lot of ways, and I think women just tend to naturally do this,
Yeah.
we hear the voice but we ignore it, and it often takes something monumental to kind of really shake us out, to
Yeah.
say no, now do something different. It's almost like we need that as permission to be
Yes.
able to make the change. And it's so funny to me because I think as soon as men hear the voice, if the men hear a whisper, they're
Oh,
on it.
they're
They're like,
on.
good, got it, I'm out, right? You know,
Chuck
they
the
don't
job,
need permission
bought
and
the
they're not
news,
worried
whatever.
about,
Yeah.
totally, you know, they'll relocate their family, they'll
Yeah.
leave their families, they'll do whatever the voice tells them to do,
Yeah.
but we consider everyone other than ourselves. And so it often takes something monumental for us to wake up and listen to that voice. And I just think that's so fascinating, that we do that, you know,
Yeah.
that we just don't say, you know what, I do think I'm not happy. Let me really explore what that means. But what we do is say, well, but the kids, and well, I am
Yeah.
doing pretty well, and the job is paying, and everything seems to be working. You know, let me not upset. Like we
Yeah.
come up
If
with
it ain't
so
broke, let's
many.
not fix it. Yep.
Exactly, exactly, right? And so we
Yeah.
tend then to live a life of settling,
Mm-hmm.
right? For good enough,
Yes.
because we
Yes.
think it's good enough,
Oh
as
my gosh, you
opposed to
speak my
crossing
language.
over that
Yes.
line, yeah, into stepping something, into really believing that we deserve and can have something epic and amazing. Like that
Yes.
feels selfish.
It does. It does. And you know, I mean, we could talk for hours on conditioning, society conditioning, that
Oh,
so many of
totally.
us, you know, think that way and behave that way. But at some point too, I guess you need to have that personal responsibility of too, saying, of looking at yourself and going, well, I've accepted that too, and I've chosen
Hmm.
to settle. I've chosen to just, you know, not push the boundaries, not reach for anything else. I've chosen just for small content. And I guess what I often say in my writings is, if you are content, if you are happy, that all power to you. Like, that's fantastic.
Oh,
But for
yeah.
so
Yeah,
many women, there is that little voice that they're potentially ignoring, isn't there, that's saying, actually, you were made for more, you
totally.
can be more, you can
Yeah.
become more.
Yeah. And you are so right. I don't want to minimize the fact that we have been socialized to settle.
Yeah.
We have been socialized to just, have good enough. We've been socialized to make sure everyone else's needs is met before our
Oh,
own.
yes.
I mean, the patriarchy of our society has definitely created us, or tried to create us to basically be handmaidens to everyone else.
Yes.
So it's not, so if women are like, yeah, why? Or why did it take me so long? Like, please don't beat yourself up over it, because it is truly a conditioning that until you become aware of it, you don't know better, right?
Yeah.
Like Maya Angelou said, right? When you know better, you do better. But when you don't know, you
Exactly.
don't know. So please
Exactly.
don't beat yourself over, because these messages that we have gotten have been embedded and infused in
Mhm.
our little minds from the time that we start walking until the time we come to the revelation and realization that we actually can do more and have more.
Love it. Absolutely love it, Carol. Seriously, you're just talking the same language. I love it. Now, one of your subjects that you talk a lot about is slaying the imposter syndrome, and that kind of fits in with this, doesn't it? Because let's say you've got the lady who's suddenly
Mhm.
like, she's had that little voice nagging away for a while, and then she decides through prompting or whatever, or she just gets up one day and goes, "This is it. I'm actually going to have my, was it Shirley Valentine moment? I'm sick of life as it is. I want to create a new path." But then along with that comes this fear of, but I don't have any history in this career or this type of life. People know I'm unqualified. I don't have the experience. Like, how do women get through that battle in themselves, that imposter syndrome that holds them back from really stepping and growing into this different area they want to move into?
Yeah, that is a phenomenal question. And honestly, it is going back to what I just said earlier about the conditioning that,
Mm-hmm.
this idea that we're not good enough, or that we're going to get found out, or if we do succeed at something that somehow or other, we can't repeat that or do it again. All of these things from imposter syndrome, and this thing about people pleasing and perfectionism that we also have, right? That we always have to do better, or it's never
Yeah.
good enough, are all some of the signs and symptoms of imposter syndrome. But I have to tell you, it starts with rewiring or changing the narratives that we
Mm-hmm.
tell ourselves about
Yeah.
ourselves, right? Because that's where it comes from. So once we're able to recognize that when we start hearing these messages, that A, they're not true, that B, they're a part of societal conditioning, that actually, and then we start looking for evidence to support the truth of our abilities and what we can do. When we can really rewire, retrain, reframe those narratives and those faulty thinking that we have about it, that's when we could truly overcome imposter syndrome, right? I often think of it like the movie A Beautiful Mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's one thing
Yeah.
I always tell my clients, and if anyone has seen the movie, it's about, I forgot his first name, but Professor Nash was his name, and he suffered from schizophrenia,
It's
and he would
Russell
see
Crowe,
these.
isn't it?
Russell Crowe played
Yes. Yeah.
Nash, played the character, and he always saw these other people who he would listen to. He thought they were real, but they
Yeah.
weren't real, right? And the reason I use that analogy is because in a lot of ways, that's what imposter syndrome is. It's like these
Mm.
characters were following you, telling you things, and you have the choice to either listen to them or to ignore them, right?
Yes.
Because I'm not saying that they'll go away, but we have the choice to either believe that or know that those are all their lies. It's not really true. It doesn't really exist. And we can choose to create a new narrative about our talents and our skills and our abilities where we start to own it and embrace it and then step forward and move beyond it. And that's really the way to slay imposter syndrome, is really reframing our belief about all of those lies that imposter syndrome tends to feed us.
Totally, totally with you. So, have you got some examples of how women have, some practical examples of how women have done that, that people that you've worked
Mhm.
with? Like, what's one or two keys that you could give listeners who are like, well, that sounds great, but my voice in my head is telling me constantly that I don't have the experience. I'm not talented enough. Who am I kidding? How the heck do I actually step into something different? How do I switch that off?
Well, I know it sounds simple, but it is
Yeah.
not simple.
Yeah.
Right. But the way to do it is really to dump everything that you're thinking out of your head and start searching for evidence that proves that whatever it is that you're thinking isn't true. And literally writing it all down on a sheet of paper, challenging what it is that your brain is telling you, and then start looking for evidence that disproves everything there. So, for example, if you hear yourself saying, "Oh, I could never do that presentation, nobody will want to listen to me." Well, think back to a time when you actually did do a presentation and people actually listened to you, right? There's proof there that you actually can do whatever it is that you're thinking in the moment that you can't do. What is true is that our brain will always look for evidence of the things we believe, right? So if we believe we can't do that presentation, we're going to think, oh, well, I did do a presentation 5 years ago and then somebody walked out of the room, therefore I'm horrible at it, right? But if you think back to times where you actually gave presentations, where you spoke up in a meeting, where you led a session, where you were the one on stage introducing someone else, whatever it was, look for evidence and examples of where you actually were able to do the thing that in the moment you're thinking you can't do. Look for evidence that you did do it. And then start letting that fill your brain and belief system as opposed to the alternate version that you're giving yourself, right? So I know it sounds simple, but that is the way that you rewire, kind of program your thinking around something, right? Because if we believe something is true, our evidence will always look for, our brain will always look for evidence to support it. So if you're thinking something, challenge it, right? Challenge, is it really true? Just don't accept it. Just don't say, well, I'm hearing all this negative critic in my head, therefore it's true. No, challenge it. That's the work. That's the exercise that you have to do. Get it all on paper. And honestly, when I have my clients write it on the sheet of paper, they look at it and they're thinking, that's like, why am I thinking that? That's ridiculous. That's not true. Even if you ask yourself, is that really true what you're thinking? Then you'll realize that it's just the fear or doubt or anxiety that's really filling your brain with those type of negative thoughts. That is really not a true thing. And so sometimes just getting it out of your head and on a sheet of paper can be life-changing, honestly, because if we try to process it in our brain, it's not going to work because your brain's already telling you, oh, no, you can't do that. Or no, you're going to fail at that. Or
because your
no,
brain's
that's
trying to
not
protect
possible
you,
for
isn't
you.
it? It's trying to protect
Your
you.
brain's trying to protect you, right? And so you can't ration it out in your mind. So get it on a sheet of paper. And when you put it on a sheet of paper, your prefrontal cortex, the logic part of your brain, can actually kick in and look at that and then start challenging that emotional or amygdala, that part of your brain that's filled with emotion and fear and doubt. That prefrontal cortex can kick in and start challenging all of that cortisol that's rushing through your body that's telling you you can't do something so that you can actually move to the other side of it. So it really is a cognitive behavioral process that can really be used to shift your thinking about it.
Sorry, I nearly cut in on you there. I was just going to say, and that takes self-discipline, doesn't it? Because you're having to reestablish new positive patterns of behavior, and that can take time.
Your brain is a computer program. Really, it's a programming, it's a system. And so just like you would create a computer program for your computer and says, okay, when I hit that button, just go. That's what we've done in our brain. So to create a different programming, it's going to take time, right? Because we have ran that program for 10, 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not going to change overnight. So we have to reprogram it, but then we have to wake up every morning and reprogram. And that's the thing that people think, that's the work that's challenging that people don't want to do because they think, well, I did it once. Doesn't it work always?
I'm done now.
No. It's a daily process. And that's why I use the analogy of a beautiful mind, because just like with Professor Nash, those people never went away. He always saw those people. But the choice is every day he made a decision. Do I listen to them or do I listen to the truth? And that's what we have to do. Every day is make the choice of which voice you're going to hear. The one that's telling you lies about what you can't do, or the truth of the matter that you can actually do the things that you think you can't do.
That's so cool. I love it. I did a little exercise. I actually retrained at Midlife and went and worked as a personal trainer for a number of years. And I used to deal with this with women, because they had those patterns going in their heads that I'll never get fit, I'll never be strong, I'm no good at this. And so, we were always dealing more with the head, I think, than the body. And so I used to do that really simple little pattern interrupt, the old rubber band around the wrist thing. And if ever they caught themselves saying things like that, they had to snap it. It would suddenly interrupt that thinking pattern. And then they had to say, hang on, I am capable of getting strong. I'm capable of getting fit. I'm doing the work. I'm here at the gym. And they had to learn to reprogram how they thought about themselves. And the ones that did that pattern were the ones that saw far greater transformation than the other people who eventually drifted off and you didn't see them again. So it's just little practical
I love that.
things like that you can do to.
I love that.
Reinforce the thinking. Now it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because so many women at midlife, and I'm included in this. By the sounds of it, you're the same. Part of our change, our reinvention, is also included changing the work that we do, our how we interact with the world, whether we end up being business owners or changing jobs or going back to school, retraining, whatever. And so with that, though, is always going to come that extra little voice, isn't it, saying, who the heck do you think you're kidding? You're beginning in your 40s and your 50s, and you're up against these guys who've been doing it for years. How do you work with clients who are trying to balance out the whole learning the skill set for the new career path that they want, as well as getting their heads sorted? And I'm going to throw another one in, make it even a bit curlier for you here, Carol. And also dealing with the fact that, they're taking a risk financially, potentially in their 40s or 50s to kind of, to step out into something new. Like what's a really basic type of encouragement that you've got for people who are kind of trying to cover those whole three areas? Sorry, I threw you in it here.
No, this is great. There's a couple things. Let's start with the money piece first, because I always say you're never going to jump out of where you're at into something completely new automatically, right? Without doing some work and preparing yourself for it. So, people initially don't go after exploring what they want to do because they think, oh my God, I'm going to be broke and homeless and lose my house and live in the street if I do anything other than I'm doing, right? But I always say you're not making the leap. You're preparing yourself for it. And part of the preparation is to consider your finances, right? You're not going to go into something that's going to ruin your lifestyle. You're not going to make a change that's going to totally ruin everything financially that you have going on, right? But in the process of discovering what you can do, maybe you set up some parameters that will help you be successful when it's time to make that change. If the change requires you to take a reduction in pay, it may not, right? That's not always the truth of the matter, that you're going to lose money if you make the transition. But you want to think financially, you want to be financially responsible. So maybe you need to save more. Maybe you need to sock away more in retirement. Maybe you need to start cutting out certain expenses that you don't need anymore, right? Maybe there's some things that you can sell or get rid of. So there are things you can do financially to prepare yourself if you know you're going to be financially impacted by the change, right? Because you're not making the change overnight, right? The process of even discovering what you want to do is going to take you time. And in that time, you could be doing some things financially to support yourself. But the other thing is, I always tell my ladies, you are not starting over. You are never starting new. You're just transferring or translating your skills from one years of experience in an industry to another. Fantastic. And this is why I help them tap into their genius. What are the gifts and skills and talents you have, irregardless of your degrees or experience or the skills that you've learned along the way? And when they start seeing that they already bring a wealth of experience and knowledge and skill sets to the table, then they realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm not starting over. I'm just merely shifting what I'm doing from this place. And now I'm going to bring all that skills and talents to another place. Now, there are sometimes if you want to make a tremendous, a big shift, like you want to go from teacher to a doctor, well, that it's going to require you to go to medical school, just right? There's study there. Right? Exactly. There's a few professions that will require you to scale up and get some different education. But for the most part, the skills that you've learned parenting, the skills that you've learned running a house, the skills that you've learned managing the finances, the skills that you've learned even when you were a kid, going back to, were you the one people always called upon to, be the leader or the captain of the softball team? Were you the one that they always leaned on for advice or input because you were knowledgeable and had a great listening ability, and were able to get a sense of, what was going on with people and help to solve their problems. So you have great problem solving and listening abilities, right? So when you start tapping into what you naturally bring to the table, your natural gifts and geniuses, you realize you're never really starting over. You're just translating all of the gifts, talents, and skills that you have into the next industry. And it's important that you realize that, because when you are stepping into a new place, you never want to go in thinking, oh, well, I'm new and don't know anything.
Yeah.
You want to go in thinking, while I may be unfamiliar with this particular industry or this particular company, what I am bringing is a wealth of experience and background that I know can benefit you, your company, your team, your department, and your bottom line.
That's a great
Right. So a
reframe.
lot of it,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's the key, is just reframing. Is reframing everything that you bring to the table in a way that makes sense for what it is that you want to do next. And that's a big part of rebranding that I do with my clients that we work through, is just really retooling, reframing everything you already have to make sense for where it is that you're going. You're never starting over. That's a big myth. For midlife people who are shifting or reinventing themselves, that they think, oh, I'm starting from scratch, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the way you do it.
That's brilliant. Such good practical tips. And yeah, I totally hear you on you're just changing direction and transferring skills and building upon what you already have. I think that's brilliant. And it's so critical for women to remember that, particularly women who perhaps have spent a lot of their years, in the home with kids. And these are the women that I used to train, particularly in the gym too, and they'd be so full of self-doubt. But really, the skills that they already have, the wisdom they have, is, that only comes with the years that they've put into life already. So very, very encouraging. Very encouraging.
Absolutely. I've helped so many women who were never in leadership roles, quote unquote, but because they were running their houses and leading teams and managing the book club or taking care, were able to translate those skills. That is director level. That is work at a leadership level, to be able to step into positions at that level, because they were able to show that, yes, I absolutely can run a budget. Yes, I absolutely can manage people. Yes, I absolutely can handle multiple systems. Yes, I do have an idea toward the bottom line and what my skills and talents bring toward, helping contribute to that bottom line, right? And so again, if you know how to speak that language and translate what you already know how to do into something that's useful, that's all another company or a job seeker or an employer rather, or a hiring manager is looking for, is that you feel confident in knowing that what you bring to the table is going to make a difference in their organization.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I've not actually heard it phrased like that. Like, those skills in the home, you are definitely already at leadership level. That is brilliant. And that's such a little gem, I think, for people listening in who might be doing the imposter thing. That gem alone is absolutely worth hearing. So thank you for that, Carol. So you talk a lot about clarity, and I mention clarity all the time. But can you tell me again, for people listening in, why is clarity important?
Well, think of it this way. If you were getting in a car and you wanted to go to Florida, right? Regardless of where you're starting, and you have no idea where Florida is, or what road you should take, or how long it's going to take, would you make it to Florida? Probably not. And if you did, it would be a fluke or an accident. So that's the way I want you to think of clarity. Clarity is just helping you have the tools and the map, if you will, that will take you to the direction of the destination that you want to head to. Right. And without that clarity, you just kind of meander around, and you waste time, you waste energy, you waste money, you waste resources. And it could be excessively frustrating. It's going to impact your self-esteem as well as your confidence level when you don't have a clear direction of where you're going.
Yeah.
And then what you're liable to do as well is to take the advice of well-meaning friends and other
Mm-hmm.
people who say, oh, well, Florida's this way. And then somebody else is like, no, Florida's that way.
Yeah.
Oh, no, the
Yeah.
best way you should go is to take the high. Oh, no, don't avoid the highway, right? Which is going to cause more confusion. And that's what people tend to do. They ask other people, what should I do? What do you think? And you're going to get all of these different opinions, and
Mm-hmm.
you still won't know what's the best path for you. Maybe you hate highways, maybe you hate 2-lane roads, maybe you need to understand what's best for you, so that when you are getting advice or tips, that you know which ones you need to take in and which ones to ignore, because you know that is better for you and this one is not better for you. So clarity is so powerful because it allows you to be able to get to where you want to go in a way that makes sense for you, in a time frame that makes sense for you, and in a way that best serves you and best serves how you like to operate and be in the world. And when we don't know that, we're liable to just end up in the river or the swamp because
Yeah.
we're following other people and listening to other people, and we're just not sure where we're going to begin with.
Right.
So that's
Mic
how I
drop
like to think
right
of
there.
clarity.
Yeah, that was perfect. Perfect. Because the reason I asked you that too, and I'm so glad you answered how you did, because I think new year, new me, all this type of thing, all the memes are out there. And when we don't have a clear picture, it can be really easy just to get swept along with whatever, because I should be doing this and I should be
Yes.
doing that. And we don't take the time to really dig deep and get clear on where it is where we want to go. And it's that old
Right.
airplane, that flies 1 degree off course analogy. If you find yourself off course just slightly at the beginning because you haven't taken that time to get clear, you're going to find yourself right over here, when really in your heart you wanted to be over here as regards to what you're doing, what your work is, what your life is. So that's
Yeah,
perfect. And
absolutely. And
yeah,
and I use the analogy of, like, if you want to go to Florida, but I think the first question is, do you really want to go to Florida, right?
yes,
Because sometimes even the destination we
yeah,
think we want is because we think we want it. Maybe you
yeah,
really, if you think about it, if you know yourself and know what it is that you're really looking for and going after, you realize you really want to go to Hawaii. You don't even want to go to Florida, right?
yeah,
But you think that's the place to go because of what other people have said, or what you think it's where you should be, right? So clarity is so powerful because
yeah.
it lets you get to where it is that you want to go that makes sense for you.
We could go for hours. You're such an amazing lady. Can you tell me, where can people find you, and tell me about some of the programs that you have on offer that people might like to jump in and have a look at?
Absolutely. Well, you can always start at my website, which is www.carolparkerwalsh.com. And I have a couple of options. You can always schedule a call with me if you want to talk about your path. But I also have a program called Fearless, the Career Rebel Academy, which really
Mm.
is specially designed for high professional women at midlife who are trying to seek that clarity, overcome that imposter syndrome, and really step into that next iteration of their life and career. So come find me on the website, and you can find that and so much more options for you. You can always check out my podcast too, which is also
Yes.
free advice and information that I think will help you if you're thinking about different things that you want to do in your life and career.
Fantastic. Thank you. So please, everybody, go do that. Go jump into Carol's website, get into a podcast. This lady is brilliant. She's got so much to give there. So just get in there and take the time to really absorb it and listen and learn and go deep. And it'll just set you up for so much, a more fulfilling, purposeful journey ahead. So yeah, all of those links will be below. All of Dr. Carol's websites, everything will be below. Her biography will be below. So you'll read that, you'll be even more blown away. But Carol, I just want to thank you for being with us today. It's just been really great.
Kat, it was my pleasure. And thank you for having me and letting me share with your audience. Thank you.
Oh, look, honor is mine. So everybody, please, if you're listening in online, please do make sure to share this episode out. Make sure to leave a review. It's so appreciated, and it helps this podcast get out and be heard by other midlifers. If you're on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe to share, leave a comment. Let us know what your thoughts are on some of the things that Dr. Carol's talked about today. Everybody have a fantastic day, and we'll see you soon on the next episode of the Rocking Midlife Podcast.